Welcome back to Bite Size Magic. My name is Snack, and today I'm going to go over one of cEDH's most infamous decks, Etali Primal Conqueror with Julian Sunglasses Silva. In this episode, we're going to really do a deck tech with Etali, break down how to play the deck, why to play the deck, and most importantly, I think, how to politic with this deck. I think it's a lot more than variance with it, and there's something special to this, as we saw Julian do phenomenal last season, top 16 in the Invitational on Etali, and being in the top 3 this season on the leaderboard, playing primarily Etali, but some other decks as well. So we're going to jump in. Again, if you like episodes like this, please like and subscribe. Consider joining us on Patreon. Helps us do what we do. But without further ado, let's jump on in. My name is Zach, and today we're here to talk about a big dino, and I have the one and only Julian, aka Sunglasses, here to talk to me about this deck. Thanks for joining me on the show, Julian. Do you want to just say hi and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you, Zach, for having me on here. A long time coming. Pretty excited. I'm pretty well known for playing non-blue decks. Recently, at the 2025 Top Deck Invitational, I top 16 with Etali. Just at this recent Fishbowl, I placed second, and I had a really amazing run in the Swiss that I think is going to be hard to top. But yeah, I think that's mostly what I'm known for.
Yeah, we're now 1-1, our record.
Yes, yeah, 1-1, and unfortunately, I didn't get to play you in the top 16 this time.
Yeah, no, I wish. I instead had a 3-hour game go to time in the top 16.
Yeah, happy I dodged that one.
Yeah, gosh. But yeah, I mean, you've been playing what other non-blue decks have you played, just for reference? I know about Trog, so turbo stacks, but what else has there been?
Yeah, so at Salt City, which was a platinum event, I top 16 with Trog, which is, really heavy stacks, Rakdos deck that wins a lot with combat damage and isn't really super heavily combo based. But I also top 16'd the Boil 2, which up until Steel City was the largest event. And I top 16 playing Magda.
Oh, you were playing Magda? No way.
Yeah.
I did not know
I've moved off it for reasons that we may or may not, go into here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually might be a good starting point for talking about why I moved away from some of these other non-blue decks and moved into playing Etali. A big reason was the Invitational and practicing leading up to that. I know you had like a very different path than me. I spent most of the year leading up to it absolutely crushing in the Swiss of these events. I was playing Magda, I was playing all these like weird, wacky Brewer's Advantage decks where I felt like I got a big edge in politics and being able to sneak in wins where people may have been uninformed about what exactly I was doing.
Or when to interact with you, maybe.
Yeah. When to interact, what to do, and it was very tricky. Now, unfortunately, and I kind of noticed this pattern, was I would get to the top 16 and I would be against these really good decks piloted by really good players, and they're like, yeah, I know what you're doing. You're not gonna pull one over on me. And so my conversion rate of actually like turning these top 16s into wins or top 4s was really poor.
Yeah.
I struggled a lot with that. And going into the Invitational, where I think Max P kind of like said it the best, was every game is gonna feel like a finals.
Yes.
Everybody knows what they're doing. They're all playing really good decks. And I realized I had to make a switch. I could not play Magda or Tevesh Rog or some of the other decks I was playing. I really needed to move on to something that I felt had like a lot more presence and was not very easy to stop, even if you had interaction for it.
How did you land on Etali? Did you see it? Did you see someone playing it, or was it just like it drew you in?
So I have a few locals. One of my friends, Peyton, he is kind of like the person that introduced me to the deck, and he's an incredible player. Doesn't travel a lot for many events, but he's kind of a local powerhouse and played Etali. But there are some actual like statistical reasons that I lean towards the deck. Going into the Invitational, one of the weaknesses I had was like these high resource games where everybody has a heuristic study. You've talked about these a lot, mid-range hell.
I
really struggled in them. You know, even if I had those kind of, when I did play like Evan's Kinnan list, even when I got in those situations, I really struggled navigating them. And I really wanted to play a turbo deck so that I could avoid those really high resource games, kind of push things into this like early game is what matters most setup. And so I took a look at the statistics revolving around all of these turbo decks that were present at the time. You know, a lot of people were talking about Rogsai. Ral was like a big up-and-comer at the time.
Yeah.
Kevin Simmons was raving about the deck. He beat me like completely drunk out of his mind at Fishbowl and in Lobby COD, and the deck looked crazy.
I remember that game.
yeah, it was fun. But like I said, you know, focusing on this top, like the invitational, and it being all these really good players, I took a look at EDH Top 16, this, you know, site for all the conversion rates and stuff, and I manually went through and looked at specifically how well decks perform in top 16 of larger events. And so I have a couple numbers here. I don't want people to kind of like read into these like a little too much. You know, I'm not saying that like, here's this number, this deck's bad, or, you know, something like that. But in top 4, Rogsai has a 21% win rate. Despite having this like really crazy conversion rate into top 16 of like in the 25%, it starts to dwindle a little bit. And Ral, which has even the like crazier stats right now, has a 28% conversion rate. If you enter a tournament with 50 or more players, you have a 28% chance of getting into top 16.
Nutty.
But when it comes to actually like winning the top 4 game, that number falls all the way down to around 15%.
Are you looking also at the 16-4? So going from semis to finals?
Yeah, the 16-4 for all these decks is like pretty close. They're around the like 28-29%.
That's pretty high. Okay, I thought we were talking about like breaking into top 16 from Swiss.
Oh no, sorry. Top 16 to top 4. Yeah, they all kind of hover around between 27-29 roughly.
Okay. So we're looking at like what happens when I get into a top 4.
Yeah.
What do I have the best chance of winning with?
Exactly. You know, like I'm in the finals game. What are my best odds of winning? And Etali came in at 28%, which at the time was right around the same number that Kinnan and T&K had.
Wow.
Which, you know, there's a lot of reasons why this number could be like the number that it is. I'm not saying that necessarily these are like equivalent decks, but when I was trying to pick a turbo deck specifically for the invitational, this number like really gravitated the deck towards me, and I felt like it might be my best choice.
Gotcha. Okay. Very interesting. So having a real math-based perspective on the deck you chose instead of just being like, I like dinosaurs and or something like,
well,
you know, I played it once and it was great. I think that's like a very interesting and unique way to do it. We have so many more tools coming out with cEDH. Like I know, you know, Eldrazi Dev is really helpful with these mulligans, and cEDH.io is a new tool that just got unveiled. Like we're seeing a lot more data being present in the game, and the ability to make these informed decisions is becoming easier and more accessible to people. So yeah, I would just highlight all these tools to anyone watching as a way, if you're not sure what deck you want to play, use the data to help inform your decision. Don't just be like, well, Blue Farm's the best deck, that's what I should play. You know, we have to mix like our interpretations, our vibes with what's actually just true, which is Etali has the best top 4 conversion rate. Is it the best top 4 to win conversion rate out of any turbo deck?
Out of the turbo decks that at the time had like appropriate number of tournament entries to where I felt the data was reliable.
Gotcha.
The absolutely craziest number is Timna Dargo. It has, I believe it's 34%.
Nutty.
That being said, like the data set is like around half the size of Ral and Etali. The deck is very much underplayed. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the truth. I feel like it was discovered, you know, like Kellen was winning with it last year, and then I thought people were playing it more and more, and then, you know, we come to the Invitational, and it's in the open, and I don't think it was present. I'm not sure if someone top 60 in the open actually, but then going forward, it was like a little while until Sylvie picks it up and wins Fishbowl, and it's like we just keep seeing Tim Nadargo like spike these gigantic events, like huge, like the biggest events that we've ever had, and it's just it's fascinating to me that it's performing well. Right at that big level. Yeah,
especially for how few people play it.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So you talked about how Etali is. And I like the phrase here, removing big games, big resource games, right? Mm-hmm. How do we compare this to, because you were saying like you found that you had some weakness in that mid-range hell. How do you create strength with a deck that feels, because whenever you mulligan Etali, right, it's like the same thing. We're looking for the same thing every time. It's the same plan. It's very linear, but the deck is very good at that plan. So talk to me about like how your strengths and your weaknesses around the deck kind of interplay with how Etali plays. Like why do you two work as a pair?
Yeah, so I think this is pretty interesting. Like I have a background in a lot of hero shooters. If you played MOBAs, like this is also like fairly similar. Mm-hmm. But what character you play is very much like catered towards your skill set. And that's something that I don't think is very present in cEDH. People tend to gravitate just towards like the very best deck.
Yeah.
When it comes to something like TNK and Kinnan, these decks, part of the reason why they're so good is because they're good at all points in the game.
Yes.
You can have really fast hands with Kinnan, you can have really strong mid-range hands with Kinnan, and you can have incredible late games with Kinnan. Mm-hmm. So if you were to take, I don't know, let's just imagine your win rate is like 30% or something. A good chunk of that win rate is going to come from these late games. A good chunk is going to come from the mid games, and a good chunk will come from the early games. Mm-hmm. So if you were to have a struggle with at any point in one of these games, if you find that you're really bad at taking risks and you're not good at keeping risky Kinnan hands that win on turn 2, then you're going to miss out on a lot of the potential win percentage that the deck has. So for me, when I struggle with these big games, almost all of Etali's win rate is just coming from the small and then some games in the mid game. Mm-hmm. And so my strengths at being able to navigate these lower resource games, all of that can be channeled into the win rate super efficiently. Mm-hmm. And I don't really have to worry about participating in these super complex large games.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's kind of like, I think a cool way to talk about it too is there's, like in Skyrim, I don't know if you've ever played Skyrim, but it's like,
oh yeah, of course,
these sorts of games where you can have, high stats in one area, can overcompensate. Like I can be super fast and very dexterous, but I'm not very strong, and so you can have these sort of things that make someone really good in a direction or in an area and then really weak in other areas. Blue Farm for me is like, you're kind of just like nines across the board, You're probably going to be the best, if not the best, at every category in the game whenever you're in that category. Like you can maximize the turbo, the mid-range, and the late game potentials. There are decks that are 10s in some of those areas, and maybe Blue Farm's an 8, but Etali definitely is a 10 in the early, and then you go down to like probably like a 6 and then like a 2 or like a 1 in the late game, So it's cool to see that you can, not just play the generic thing, but you can have something that's more slanted towards your playstyle and who you are. And I think EDH in general, there is a lot more of this, like, my personality is X, or this is how I feel, this is the kind of deck I play. And that's a little less so in cEDH. It's a little more homogenized, but there's still a wide variety of decks that are viable, that are winning, and that can continue to do well, that aren't just, Kinnan and Blue Farm and Rogthras.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think like a really important part of all this, especially when it comes to Etali, like as a deck unique to many others, is that it is super reliant on the metagame in which you're playing in, because the cards that you're flipping are from your opponent's decks. So whatever your opponents happen to be playing are naturally the cards you're going to end up playing with. So going into the meta of, transitioning from the Invitational, which is like very TNK heavy, and going into the Fishbowl, I still felt very high on Etali because I was predicting this very turbo heavy metagame. The games were going to be very, very small, low resource. There may only be like a couple pieces of interaction played in any given game. And when you play Etali in those pods, you end up just naturally like acclimating to it. The less mid-range pieces and like late game pieces that are in your opponent's decks, the more likely you are to hit strong turbo cards that already complement the playstyle of the deck you're playing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's also, some people talk about how stacks is a really hard archetype to play, but I do believe the Etali skill like gap, you know, what separates like a good Etali player from a bad Etali player is their understanding of their opponent's decks. So understanding like what pieces can I use? How do I use them correctly? The political aspect of the deck I think is huge and is something we'll get into more depth in as this conversation kind of progresses. But I mean, one of like Etali's known for being is an RNG deck, right? So it's sort of the, like you're talking about, or you phrase it as there's binary win cons and then there's RNG. And you would think that the RNG machine of flipping 4 random cards is not going to be as consistent as it is. And sometimes it's not. You flip terribly. But the other half the time, you know, or, you know, 60, 70, however much percentage of the time, it does work. And I'm just curious, like, how you feel about that RNG level of gameplay. Like, do you feel like you're kind of just at the mercy of whatever the dice roll is going to be, or do you feel like there's more control in that gameplay?
Yeah, absolutely. So like RNG is obviously a very like contentious like topic. And, you know, if Etali just said like 7 mana when I enter the battlefield, win the game, it'd be an incredible, you know, probably be a much better deck than it is even now. So there's definitely like an aspect that you have to accept that like sometimes your deck isn't going to provide the resources that you need. You know, your opponents, sometimes you're just going to hit 2 counter spells and like a dwarf, maybe, you know.
That would be terrible. I couldn't imagine doing that.
But just because like there is this underlying weakness that RNG is a big part of your deck doesn't mean that you can't extract some kind of political value from it. And I think it contrasts very well to what I call binary win cons. For example, like I think a pretty good example of a binary win con is like Devoted Druid and any of the cards that combo with it. These are cards that are combos that win the game. You know, Thassa's Oracle Demonic Consultation is also like sort of in this bubble where they say win the game, but if you encounter interaction, it's really hard for you to politic for any kind of value outside of not just winning the game.
Absolutely.
There isn't a very big range. So when you're, you know, if you're playing you play your Thassa's Oracle, hits the battlefield, ETB on the stack, cast your Demonic Consultation, and someone shows you a counterspell that you have no answer for.
You're like, I'll just get Mystic Study.
Right. So you, not only like in these politics, for you to get anything, your opponent has to just trust you. Trust the fact that you're not going to say like, psych, I name Booster Tutor or whatever and win the game, which can be difficult, especially in something like Swiss. But you also have to like make like a pretty big sacrifice. Instead of winning the game, and now you're maybe like, would you let me get a Mystic Remora because I have 1 extra open blue mana?
Right, yeah.
And you're like, now I'm doing like a, you know, if you're playing Rogsai and you go for this turn 3 Thoracle, maybe you're doing like a poor blue farm impression now, where you've blown all your resources. Commanders aren't good for this late, you know, this mid game you're transitioning to. Yeah, you have a Mystic Remora, but that's not all that great. In contrast, with Etali, you have a much wider gap between winning the game and doing nothing, where if you cast your Etali and your opponent says, well, I have this Force of Will, you know, I think I need to counter this Etali. You can have a lot more wiggle room there, where you don't have to give up as much equity in your game plan. You can politic to eventually see these extra spells and proceed with your game plan. You can flip into a lot of things that are much better than deconning for a Mystic Remora, for example, or maybe even doing nothing, right?
That's kind of, in my mind, like, that's the first time skill really presents itself with the deck, is on that first Etali ETB or cast, right? And someone shows you a Force of Will, or you hit the ETB and someone shows you like a Mindbreak Trap. And it's like getting to 7 mana on turn 2 at the end of the day is relatively simple. You know, like that's pretty basic math, you know, but then once we have to actually engage politically with our opponents on how do I, like you're saying, extract some level of value if it's not winning the game outright, like that's where you can start to actually show some skill. And I'm just curious, like what's your decision tree? What's the mindset you incorporate when, you know, let's say you cast Etali and there's a force of will that gets flashed to you and they're like, I think I'm going to counter this Etali. Like where do you go?
Often, like, a very good question is to just, like, you have to kind of inspect the board, you know, what else is present at this table? Is there another turbo deck that you can point a finger at?
Yeah.
Right? Very often there might be, especially in this, like, recent meta with a lot of turbo, there might be another turbo deck at the table, and you can, like, hey, this doesn't necessarily win the game. Who knows what I'm going to flip? There's this turbo deck, maybe this other turbo deck. They're also scary. Do you have another piece of interaction? If you blow this, are you just shields down? How likely do you think it is that this other player that kept a 7 is just going to win the game anyway if you interact here?
Yeah.
And you can always, there's a lot of negotiation tactics that you can get into about, like, I'll let you choose a spell that I flip and I won't cast it. A lot of times you'll find, like, irrational responses like, but I have a displacer kitten in my deck. What if you flip
You're gonna
that?
exile my fossil oracle.
yeah, right. And so sometimes, you know, I'll just, like, outright say something like, hey, okay, if I flip that displacer kitten, I just won't cast it.
Sure.
You know, I'm willing, like, I understand that the odds are so low that I hit a card like that I'm willing to very easily give up my equity in the chance that I flip it.
Yeah. So is it kind of, do you sort of flowchart it where it's like, all right, cast the Etali, someone shows you the force of will. Maybe someone casts force of will and you're like, all right, I need to engage in a political, like, scenario here where I can get something out of this. So at the top of the top, it's, you know, because I'll do similar things with, like, necropotence and ad nauseum. I want to have at the top of the ladder, how do I get the most equity out of this? And if they say no to that, how do I go down the rung and say, all right, how about this? And they're like, no. And then you're like, all right, how about this? And they're like, no. And you're like, all right, just counter the spell then at this point. Right. But what's sort of the flow chart that you do with sort of these Etali, you know, this initial Etali cast, right? With something like a force of will present.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like, vetoes are definitely, like, the most common.
Okay.
Just because they allow your opponent to, like, preserve their own cards, right? Yeah. Like, they don't actually want to have to cast this counter spell.
No one wants to. So
if I can sort of provide a situation where they quote unquote get a free counter spell, right? Like, I'm gonna let you choose a spell and I won't cast it.
Yeah,
you're getting a free force of will on one of the spells that I flip.
Gotcha.
Who knows what I'm going to hit?
Yeah.
Even if I, like, flip, like, 2 scary things, you still have the force of will. Right, you could still use this. Depending on the situation, I might, like, politic to the force of will has to go somewhere else.
So, like, how about this scenario? You know, you cast Etali. I have a force of will. I don't really want to use it here. Like, I am looking at this other deck that could pop off, and you say, all right, how about this? You can veto one of the cards. And I'm like, okay, that sounds good. And then you flip, like, ad nauseum and demonic tutor and underworld breach, you know, just like 3 very scary cards, all of which need to be answered. And I'm like, well, fuck, I can, like, say no to the underworld breach, right? Because you already have, like, an LED, whatever. But then I have to deal with the Nas and the DT. In this scenario, do you have people kind of, like, go back on what they're saying? They're like, I'm going to say no to this and I'm going to force will that. And you're like, well, you can't do both. So pick one.
So like exactly. Kind of the political discussion can kind of get, like, broken down there, and where you kind of have to hope that your opponent keeps their word. You are giving them, like, a lot of agency, like, especially if you pause, like, hey, you don't cast the silence this turn. And then they're like, well, I'm going to silence you anyway. And you kind of just have to eat that, right? And hope that people aren't going to lie to you.
Right.
But like you said, you can potentially flip, like, a total monster of 4 cards, and that's part of, like, the equity that I'm looking for in these games, where if you're playing a binary win con deck and you play these things, it is extremely hard to ever make a deal where your spell resolves in, like, a certain way, like ad nos draw 5 cards or something, and still result in a board state where you win the game. Whereas with Etali, you can definitely make some deals where you get past the force of will, you give them a veto, and you still flip enough cards to win the game anyway.
Yeah. And in this case, right, the veto, it's you either get the veto or the force will. You don't get both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because then you're basically saying you can have a free force of will that you get to cast on one of these Etali spells, in quote unquote. But that means you're not using that force of will on me during this turn, on this flip, whatever you're agreeing to in that initial political engagement.
Yeah, ideally, you're trying to pivot the interaction to another player. Making a deal, it's like, I won't do anything crazy, use that for someone else.
Sure. So these, we have these scenarios, right, where you make these deals, maybe you only get one scary thing, they veto that, and then you're kind of set back to like, oh, I got a noble hierarch and like fucking faithful saluting, like something that's just not very good, something terrible. And a lot of Etali, although the 7 mana is not the hardest thing to find, it is oftentimes quite all in. Like I'm gonna go for a play with maybe like a J Will or like a Seething Song and go from 2 to 3 mana up to 7, but then after that I have no cards in hand and I've kind of flipped nothing. So you talk about the idea that the fail state is actually not that bad. Rogside, a similar scenario happens. I go land, pedal, culling the weak Gnaws, and I get MBT'd, and then I'm sitting there with like, a Warrior's Oath in hand and like one land. How is that fail state different in Etali?
The fail state, like, part of it is like you're generally going to hit some kind of card advantage and some kind of mana on average, just because that's what the average cEDH deck is made up of.
Sure.
Sometimes, like, obviously these can range in quality. You could get a Noble Hierarch, you could hit a Mana Vault, you could hit an Adnaz that draws like 1 million cards, or you could hit Faithless Looting that kind of draws 2 cards.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's obviously like a range to all these things, but part of the benefit of Etali is that the way that you kickstart your like B plan is all of these clone effects that are in your deck.
Sure.
And these cards are like, once you have the Etali in play, they're super efficient, right? Like, yes, you had to pay 7 mana up front for that Etali, but as long as you flipped into, some mana or some card draw, you can probably follow that up with, something like a Molten Duplication or a Twin Flame on the following turn, or even potentially the same turn if you flipped into the mana to cast it.
Yeah.
And these are things that aren't really present in a lot of other turbo decks, where if their plan A is stopped, it takes them quite a bit of time and resources to get back into the game.
It's not just 2 mana, I'm back. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think having that fail state in Etali makes a lot of sense. I also think the prevalence of, more Kinnan, like No Bad Cards Kinnan is basically just a clone deck. Like at this point, there's like a bajillion clones. And then we're now running into the Squelcher meta, as we can start calling it, where people are going to be running this, 2 mana goblin, and Etali is going to be grabbing that a lot of the time off the top of their decks. And then it just becomes like, well, your counter spells don't work anymore. This is on the stack. It can't be countered. My prediction, how I'm looking to adapt playing a deck like Blue Farm, is I'm really valuing silence effects as highly as I possibly can. So I've been on Orum's Chant and Revel in Silence for a while. They felt amazing. I think they're just going to get better as time goes on. There's a world where we look into, these other worse silence effects, things like Permission Denied maybe, or Abeyance, like the tier C of silence effects. But it just feels like with all the turbo running around and the turbo cards that are enabling these strategies, something like silence might have a really big impact on a deck like Etali or other
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think silence is probably like the strongest effect you could have against Etali. Like, a lot of people think about Mindbreak Trap like off the top of their head, just because the condition is fulfilled really easily when Etali is played. Yeah. But honestly, the card is very beatable, and silence is really where you kind of don't have anything built into the deck in terms of like literal cards that answer it.
Oh yeah.
So
any
a lot
deck,
of
right?
really any non-blue deck. I mean, like there might be something in some other deck, like D SWAT for Orum's Chant is like maybe the best you're gonna get.
Right.
Yeah, when it comes down to these cards, like, again, this is where your RNG as an argument can help you versus a lot of other decks. And as well as how like people talk about your like Etali being a very linear deck in terms of what its game plan is.
Yeah.
So you have the advantage of, you spend a bunch of resources, you cast your Etali, and someone goes to silence you. And you can be like, hey, look, here's my hand.
Yeah.
Like, my hand doesn't do anything, right? Like, is the Rockside player going to show you his hand next to me? Like, hey, Rockside, do you want to show him your hand?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like, the vast majority of the time, this other player next to you isn't going to want to show their hand. You can just throw around questions like, hey, are you going to win on your turn? And then the person's like, humming and hawing.
Yeah.
And you can kind of navigate this player away from casting their silence against you. And you also have the argument that because you are a non-blue deck, this silence can stop you at any point.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if you were a Rogsai and, you cast your Culling the Weak to get up to, like, ad nos mana, this person just has to fire off the silence, like, now. Because if this, like, ad nos gets put on the stack, you're like, yeah, you can silence, but they're going to draw all these cards. They might be able to, so on and so forth. Or if you give them you let this ritual resolve and then they have the mana for a counter spell, things like that. Players can have responses when they are playing blue.
Sure.
You can't really get away as much.
One of the best effects in non-blue decks is a Final Fortune, right? Like, that dodges a silence pretty well, because it's like, well, you got me this turn, but I hope you have something for next turn because I'm going to have all this shit going on. Is that a consideration in Etali? Is that like a card that you've thought about at all, or is it just not quite aligned with the game plan of the deck enough?
It's an interesting effect. It's something that I'm, like, occasionally happy to hit off of opponents, but more often than not, it's kind of poor quality for your own deck. I rarely ever want to keep it in my opening hands. Like, sure, sometimes it's nice to flip into, but if I'm putting a card in my deck, like, with the hopes I, like, flip into it or something, I'd rather, just play, like, some, like, 10 mana ridiculous card.
Sure.
Right. So
an end
generally,
maybe.
Yeah. Right. Something like that's, like, a little more over the top.
Yeah.
So I try to include cards that only feel really good in the opening hand.
Gotcha. Yep.
For the most part. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think like, going back to silence.
Sure.
Part of the reason that Etali, I think, really succeeds in these low resource games is because when people have interaction, it might be their only piece. And they might only, like, it's not uncommon for you to be at a table where there's a single piece of interaction at the entire table.
Yep.
Right? Like, the TNK is clinging to their one Orum's chant for dear life because there's 3 opponents at the table that could all maybe win on turn 2, turn 3. Mm-hmm. And their game plan is to, like, hold this silence over everybody's head until they can push the game late enough to where they have the advantage. And when you're playing Etali in those situations, because your win is not guaranteed, you can really demand the opponent's like, hey, go ahead, silence me. We can lose right now.
Yeah.
Right? I think you just have to let me have this. And,
especially with the knowledge that they could silence you at any time, right? You know, like, but there becomes a point in time where it's like you become insurmountable, or you start hitting things like Grand Abolishers and Ranger Captains, and you're able to stop the other players and have a game plan for the next turn, right? Once you get there.
Yeah.
Because your resources, your advantage state is so good.
Yeah, but like, not to say that the silence is, like, defeated by this argument, right? Like, the silence is still a problem, but it means that you get to progress your board state, whereas other turbo decks might not be able to.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, I think that goes back right to the beginning of this conversation, which is like, this is the value or the power of non-linear wins with a linear deck.
Yeah.
RNG focused wins that really allow you to kind of do what Kinnan does, right? Where it's like, I can just keep gaining this modular advantage. I don't have to push right now. It's like, I'll just get a third Rhystic Study. I won't win the game.
Yeah.
But I'll win the game.
But yeah.
The last thing I'm curious about is you mentioned, or you talked about this before, about how this deck is able to avoid the draw. So tell me what that means to you and how that, comes to fruition with a deck like Etali.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, this is another point that really like doubles back to the argument of RNG. But when you're in these Swiss rounds and someone presents a win, another player shows interaction, and they're like, I would like a draw.
Yeah.
Right. This is like a super, super common situation, probably happens at least once for you at every tournament. And if the situation is like two binary win con decks that you're staring at, you kind of have to accept the draw, right? You know, I have a Thassa's Oracle on the stack, and then player B next to me has Thassa's Oracle Decon in their hand, right? There's not really a situation where we're ever going to be able to convince this player with the interaction to not take a draw.
Yeah.
But if I'm Etali in, you know, seat B or whatever, I'm following up, I can have the option of refusing the draw. And because, you know, I can show my hand, I can be like, hey, look, I don't have a deterministic win. I'm going to copy my Etali and see what happens. I'm not taking the draw here.
Interesting.
And because the opponent is faced with the situation of a 100% chance of losing the game, or maybe like 60% chance of losing the game, they're sort of forced to go along with you unless they just want to spite play you for whatever reason.
Sure.
But I think it's pretty uncommon.
That's an interesting scenario, actually, now that you talk about it, right? Because it's like, let's say turn 2 before you Rogsai cast Nas, you know, the likelihood of that winning is much higher than a single Etali flip winning the game.
Yes.
Right? So player B, or maybe, player A is Rogsai, your player B, player C has, you know, the force of will or whatever, the mind break trap. And, you know, and they're casting their Nas, right? Before you. So player A goes to cast their Nas, player C says, hey, I have this mind break trap, I'm offering the draw. This is the only piece of interaction I have. You as player B on Etali can go, I'm not taking the draw. Like, and they're gonna be like, well, you have an Etali on your turn. Yeah, but that is less likely to win than this Nas. And I don't want to just take draws because I have a chance to do something. It might not win the game, but I still want to be a part of this. Is that kind of how those conversations can progress? And
yeah,
I think you find it backfiring on you at all?
It can backfire on you, but I think that the benefit outweighs the risk, right?
Okay.
When I'm playing in the Swiss of these tournaments, and I think it's a big reason why I have such successful Swiss runs with Etali, is that I'm willing to lose the game.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead. You know, we can just lose to this Adnaz.
Yep.
I'm just not going to accept the draw, and I want my percentage chance of winning the game. Even though it's, you know, a coin flip, I think you just have to accept it. And when I'm playing Etali, my goal is to just flip that coin as many times over the course of Swiss as I can.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot more reasonable, you know, to say that though. Like me going next playing Ral, you know, looking very set up, like it's pretty unreasonable. I'm gonna be like, no, I'm not gonna king make. I'm just gonna lose the first person if you're not accepting the draw. But on Etali, it's like you really can leverage the fact that who knows what you're gonna hit. Do you make deals at that point where you're like, if I hit a win, I won't go for it. I'll just go for value, or are you just saying, no, I'm not taking the draw here. If you want to lose to this, we're losing to this.
Yeah, no, That's really the strength, is that I think that the odds are reasonable enough of me not winning that I don't have to make deals that disclude my ability to win the game.
Gotcha.
Whereas I feel like a lot of these other decks, even decks that are like a little bit RNG, like Ral, like really they're, you know, almost certainly going to win if they flip. You don't have a reasonable argument there. You have to be providing your opponents with like a reasonable chance to win the game if you're going to force them into this kind of situation.
Yeah.
And I think Etali sits on the sweet spot.
So the other thing that Etali does that always baffles me is people just assume you don't play interaction, you know, and it's just crazy. They're just like, they're never, you know, the Etali player has the red blast and people are just like in shock. They're like, what? Like, I didn't know you played any interaction. Or more likely they have a lot of permanent interaction, removal, things that deal with things on the board, which in a lot of cases, A, no one's expecting you to have it, and B, you get to really pick the window of when you want to use it. So
We just started a Patreon and a Discord, so if you want to connect with me and the rest of the Bite Size crew more, you can check out our links for Patreon and Discord below. It's a great way to support the channel, as well as engage with us more. We'll do play days every single month. We're here to chat with our patrons and hear what you guys want for videos, so make sure to go check those out if that's something you're interested in. We really appreciate all the support so far. We can't wait to keep growing.
how does this deck, interact in the way that it does? What are the strengths that it has when it interacts? And then how does that like lend itself to, a very proactive game plan, and when do you hold your interaction back? Like give me the whole rundown of like what interaction looks like when you play Etali.
Yeah, so when it comes to Etali, you are stuck in Gruul colors. So you have access to like the tiniest bit of stack interaction with Red Blast, Pyroblast.
Sure.
Those are good cards people are familiar with, but the majority of your removal or your interaction suite is removal. It's mostly ways to remove creatures, ways to remove stacks pieces, and normally these cards are much worse than stack interaction. But in Etali, they can often serve the same purpose as stack interaction, or even be quite a bit better.
How so?
The obvious like first thing to mention is that if you flip into a piece of removal, it is something that you can actually use to affect the board, whereas if you were to flip into a force of will, it would not provide any benefit to you.
Pretty dead flips. Yeah. Packs the negation.
Yeah. Going into more like the ability to convince players to kind of bend to your will, removal is often a lot more convincing because it affects your opponent's chances to win the game in a lot more of a maybe brutal way might be the the right way to put it, especially when it comes to creature-based decks, right? Your Kinnan, your Ral, things like this. They can often be very fine with having one of their spells counter. You can counter a Ral's, card draw spell, and they're fine with that because they're just going to cast 3 more spells and then flip Ral or something. Whereas removal is much more effective in that situation. You're going to be able to interact with the Ral, and even though your interaction was a lot more limited in that situation, it ended up being a lot more impactful. And so since removal can be more impactful in these ways, you often have a lot more political equity in terms of what you're able to ask for from other players.
As a quick note here, I would just say like one thought process to have when you're interacting in cEDH is, this isn't always true, but especially in a non-blue deck, when you're using your interaction, it's always a good idea to get something out of it, right? Like, don't just go out there throwing out, your pyrokinesises and your furies without getting something in return. Leverage it so that it helps your game plan and you don't lose, right? And maybe that's kind of where you're going with this, right? Like, what's the political leverage that you get to have? Yeah.
So part of what makes permanent interaction so valuable is that a lot of the blue decks that are playing all these counter spells have a very limited suite of removal. Yeah. They're not able to interact with the board very effectively. So, if it were, if there's a Magda in play that is able to win the game, even if your opponents have 10 counter spells between them, it doesn't do anything to interact with this Magda. So your one lightning bolt might be worth more than all 10 of those counter spells in that situation. And like you said, even though the like immediate conclusion might be Magda's trying to win the game, I will stop them from winning the game.
Yeah.
Since you're the only person that is able to interact in the situation, you can make some pretty serious demands of the other players. Right? You can make the like, hey, I will stop this Magda, but I want a imaginary Grand Abolisher for the first like 4 spells I cast during my turn or something. Like, you can make some like pretty ridiculous demands because the alternative for them is losing the game.
Sure. I imagine it's easier again because of the RNG nature of the deck to be like, hey, I'll kill Magda, but no one casts spells on my turn, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want to have the agency to see what I get, right? Because I'm not playing an or a linear deck, like I'm going to be flipping Etali. I imagine it's a little harder to make that argument when you have slightly more deterministic cards in hand, but I'm sure you could also just start that political engagement at the highest level, right? Getting the most equity, saying, hey, I want a Grand Abolisher for the first 4 spells, knowing you have a Squee and a Food Chain, and nothing will matter after those 2 things resolve, right? Besides removal.
There's of course like degrees to which you can argue it, but like ultimately what you're trying to do is give yourself winning chances.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, I will stop this win, but I want a chance to win.
Sure.
And like you said, and we've said earlier in the podcast already, because the deck is RNG, it is reasonable for your opponents to give you a chance to win.
Yeah.
It might be a risk assessment that they have to take.
Yep.
Whereas you just can't make that deal with something like Rogsai.
Yeah.
Because they don't maybe win the game. They win the game.
Right. Well, in a way, Ad Nauseam
Yeah.
is an RNG card. You know, who knows
Oh,
that
yeah.
you're going to flip off the Nas.
They could die. They could
Yeah.
die, right?
You could just die. Yeah. You could flip all lands and then, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, it's a very different scenario when you have cards to a degree. Like Necropotence, there's a little more RNG, I think, because you need specific pieces to convert it, and you need, you know, mana, you need interaction, you need wins. But definitely is a lot easier to make the argument when you're like, on my turn, I'm casting Etali, no one casts spells, and I'll stop us from losing the game right now.
Yeah. So exactly, like the benefit that you have by all of these factors sort of work together, and where you can create windows for yourself to win where other decks would not have the same ability.
Yeah.
And because you have so much more removal, which is a pretty rare resource in this format, you're able to make those windows appear more often.
Gotcha. The next thing you kind of talk about is putting your opponents in the hole with you. What does that mean? What's that phrase? How does that translate? What is the hole like?
Yeah. So, you know, when it comes to game theory, everybody at the table is just trying to maximize their own personal odds of winning the game, right? It's not just about stopping one player. Every action anyone is taking, even if it's stopping someone, is ultimately with the goal that they will eventually win.
Sure.
So if you can leverage the cards you have in hand or on board in a way that puts someone's winning chances to effectively zero, or just so low that they might as well have 0% odds, then it's really easy to bully them out of interacting with you.
This
So
could
I think
look
like
like pyrokinesis
Yeah.
gosh,
Yeah.
a whole Magda board, right? Like setting them back to the Stone Age, or a whole Kinnan board, right? You know, you take out their Kinnan, their dorks, and you're like, I'm going to do this. Like, in a way, this is kind of like cEDH terrorism, right? Where you're like, I'm going to completely kill you. You're not going to play the game unless I get a turn where you're not interacting with me.
Yeah, this happens all the time. I'll make it easy. Instead of Pyro, we'll say Fury.
Sure.
So Fury is probably one of my favorite cards in the deck, partially because it's a creature spell.
Yeah.
It's really hard to counter.
Yeah.
So your opponents might not even be able to interact with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, you know, the Kinnan could show you an MBT for your Etali, and you're like, hey, look, and you flash them the card that sends them to the Stone Age.
Yeah.
And you're like, we can both lose this game.
Yeah.
Or we can make a deal where that MBT never targets any of my spells, and my
Fury.
super ultimate removal spell doesn't ever target any of your creatures.
Right.
And this is a way where you can turn your removal spell into counter spells. You know, if your opponent is dependent on some kind of permanent on their board, your removal spell may as well be a counter spell.
I love it.
For a lot of
it's
things.
Great. It's a brilliant. It's really quite a smart way to leverage non-blue cards, right? Like a lot of times in blue decks, like I can use my counter spells twice. Like I can say, hey, I have this. Please don't go for it. The next person is primed to go, and then you can use it on the next person when they don't listen to you and get someone else to back you up. But in non-blue, we have to utilize our resources in a bit of a different way, and we have to be a little more creative with how we get them to work, especially like we said in these smaller games. You know, when you have access to less, but the less that you have access to ends up doing a ton. Talk to me about some other ways that you can kind of get your cards to do more than what's written on them. Like, how do I leverage cards that, you know, may not seem to be interaction or may not seem to get me what I need them to do, but can creatively, you know, like, how do you creatively use them to do so?
Yeah. So, I mean, probably my favorite, although it doesn't come up as often as I might wish, is Etali itself. Just the ability to dump a bunch of mana into the flip and attacking an opponent is often enough scary to the point where your opponent has to, you know, lend you an ear and make some kind of deal with you.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where a big part of playing Etali, like the willingness to lose the game, comes into play. Because activating Etali oftentimes doesn't leave you with the ability to do anything else for the rest of your turn.
Sure.
Right? If you were to, you know, transform it might be like the only game action that you take, and it doesn't actually make your winning chances very good. You know, you can attack this player, they'll die, and then you'll probably just lose to the other two.
All right.
Like, by all means, this play is not good. But the threat of this play might turn an opponent's winning chances to 0%. And so it might be like, hey, if you don't agree to not interact with me for my entire turn, I am just going to transform Etali and kill you. Yeah. And we can both lose the game.
I think that's so funny. It is definitely being a terrorist. It's kind of like, yeah. But at the end of the day, like we said, do you feel like these sorts of tactics are in good faith? Like, do you find that players sometimes will just be like, well, fuck you. Kill me then.
Yeah, I do think that they can be like a little volatile. Like
yeah.
You're sort of taking a gamble on like the emotional versus like analytical perspective that your opponent might have. But what Etali is really about is just like trying to create as many windows as you can.
Right.
So like even though this, like if you were to not offer this deal, your window might be non-existent because this person has like 8 cards in hand and like 10 open mana or whatever, right? So if your winning chances are already negligible, you don't really lose a lot by sacrificing your 1% chance to win here. You actually gain a lot by being in these scenarios where you don't have much to lose.
Right.
You can throw it away, and as long as you're willing to, you can leverage it pretty effectively.
That's sweet. I'm curious, when we talk about, in cEDH, I know there's a quote, I can't quote it directly, but it goes something like, if you're already losing a battle, the best thing you can do is create chaos, right? Like, I need to be able to throw a smoke bomb and distract everyone so that I can get away with murder on a very fine line. Yeah. So what does creating chaos with this deck look like? How do you pit your opponents against each other? And how does that result in, positive outcomes on the deck?
Yeah. So one of the things that Etali does possibly better than like almost any other deck, except for maybe like Ral or something in the format, is just having incredibly high card velocity. You're able to just cast a lot of spells during your turn, even if you aren't necessarily winning the game, and maybe it might not even be like the correct play. But since there are so many cards in this format that trigger off of whenever an opponent casts a spell or commits, does some sort of game action, you can often, kingmake isn't the right word for this, but you can put someone in a position that is pretty incredibly oppressive for the like other 2 players at the table. So, for example, if there's something like Rhystic Study on board, you have the ability to dump so many spells into this Rhystic Study, oftentimes, that they will just win the game. And the other 2 players are just going to be in the hole against them. There's not much they can do if this Rhystic player draws 20 cards off of you.
Right.
So if these other 2 players are the people that are holding you down, you gain negotiation power just by threatening to barf your entire hand into this Rhystic Study.
Yeah.
Even if it's like not the correct play, right? There could be a Vexing Bauble on board that stops all of your spells off of Etali flips from resolving, but it's not going to stop you from casting them.
Yeah.
It's not going to stop you from casting them. You know, so someone might like play a Vexing Bauble and there's a Rhystic Study on board, and you can just say like, hey, if you cast this, I am just going to dump everything into the Rhystic Study anyway, because I can't win the game. And this is my only possible, like, I have no removal.
Yep.
Look at my hand. It is 6 rituals and a clone.
Yeah.
I can't do anything if this resolves. My game is over. So I'm just going to punt to the Rhystic player if you do this.
Yeah.
And the Vexing Bauble player is put in this position where it's like, well,
fuck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dang. I guess I can't, and you can offer some deals. Like maybe you're like, hey, I will pay for, if you don't cast this Vexing Bauble, I will pay for like every Rhystic trigger that's for an Etali flip that I have this turn. You could be like, instead of casting, all of the spells off of my Etali flip, I will limit it to 1 spell. I will just cast the one best spell. Right? All you care about is making sure that you still have some kind of winning chances regarding the board state. And the fact that you're able to just do a lot of things that swing the game in wildly different directions means that you can kind of have a lot of leverage that you might not expect in some of these situations.
Yeah. I've played Etali a few times. Part of the reason I have not loved the experience is because I felt like I didn't have a lot of agency. But to me, it sounds like you've done a really good job, and I imagine most good Etali players are doing a good job of doing something where they're creating agency where it may not exist, for other decks, or where you wouldn't even think to be like, hey, if you cast this Vexing Bauble, I'm punting into Rhystic, or hey, if you use that Mindbreak Trap, I'm going to wipe your board with my Fury. Like these things that actually do, have some, or removal, right? Removal is a great, form of agency to have in a game where there's a lot of creature specific wins going on. What else makes someone like a really strong Etali player? And how does that contrast from someone who is playing the deck but not really seeing the results?
Probably the two biggest things when it comes to Etali are just like your overall mechanical player skill, like your raw ability to just navigate the flips, right? Like this is really hard to like give any advice towards.
Yeah.
It's just like be better at Magic, right?
Play more Etali.
Something that like I personally do is I play a significant amount of Vintage Cube on MTGO, which often involves playing with a lot of random cards that you might not be used to be playing at all, or like specifically with each other. There's a lot, like if you ever build a Storm deck on Vintage Cube, oftentimes your deck doesn't look the same as the previous Storm deck you played. You have to think about how to navigate this with cards that you might not be used to playing with each other. And that's personally something that has helped me a lot.
To go play MTGO. Okay. Step one. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think your mentality often plays into it a lot. And like just the willingness to politic in the ways that I've described.
Yep.
I think that like, even though I've like, we've talked about the mechanics of it all, like it can be very often like difficult to convey it in the right way. A lot of times people talk about like politics as like two steps, there's like what you're saying to someone, but then there's like how you're saying it.
So,
a lot of what we said here is like, you're kind of saying fuck you in a way. So like how do you say fuck you in a way that's not saying fuck you?
Still work with me, but fuck you if you don't work with me. I'm gonna
you have it can be very difficult to approach it, and I genuinely think that like planning a lot of these responses out in ahead can help you remain like level-headed and reasonable in these situations. If you can be like, hey, I really don't want to accept the draw here. Here's my hand. I want to flip Etali. I want a chance to win. I still think your chances of winning are pretty reasonable. I'm not going to accept the draw. It's like very different than putting in like, yeah, I'm not accepting the draw.
Off.
Screw you. I'm sending it on my turn. Yeah. We can both lose. I want to send it.
I don't give a fuck.
So I think a lot of it comes down to making sure you're like more prepared for these political situations than your opponents are. If you can be the most reasonable sounding player at the table, it will really help with making these political deals like follow through, especially if other players at the table haven't heard of it. I mentioned before the like revealing of hands because your deck is so linear. That is something that players aren't very like comfortable with often. You can be very comfortable revealing your hand, pointing at the Rogsai player and be like, well, why isn't Rogsai revealing their hand? They should show you, they should show you their hand. What if they have an Adnaz,
Yeah.
And if this player isn't prepared for that sort of political interaction and you are, then you have a leg up on them.
Interesting. It seems almost like Etali politics are unique, It's like if you play like if you've ever played like a fighting game like Smash, there's just some characters that, a lot of the characters, all the moves, like you can kind of translate. You're like, I've played this character, like I got to learn some special moves for this one. But then you go play something like Ice Climbers and you're like, everything that I knew has just been thrown out the window and I have to completely relearn how to play this deck. Or this character. Yeah. And to a degree, it feels like playing Etali is like that. So when it comes to these deals, do you have I mean, I'm sure part of this too is just playing the deck a lot, but is there a way that you're thinking about things differently? Are you trying to be more creative in your politics? Like how do you come to the realization of like, oh, this is a good strategy to use when politicking with a deck like this?
Yeah, I mean, like, I've been playing the deck for a significant amount of time, and I've had like a lot of opportunities to like A/B test my politics.
Yeah.
You know, say something one way, say it a different way.
Yeah.
See how the response is. But I think like a really important thing to do, and like this kind of goes for every deck, which is just to talk to your opponents about the politics after the game. You know, if something didn't happen the way you wanted it to, you know, ask the opponent like why didn't you accept this deal that we made, that I offered you an hour ago.
Yeah.
Right. Because like oftentimes players might not communicate the best over like the period that you're making the deal. They might, you know, want to be conserving information that you don't know about. You know, like maybe you actually made a really good offer. Your deal was actually perfect, but the opponent has like Silence MBT, Orum's Chant, and Pact of Negation in hand.
Yeah.
Right. And you just don't know that. Right. And so if you don't ask these questions, then you might walk away from the game with like a wrong interpretation of if your politics were like good or not.
Yeah. I actually think that's like a really, really intelligent thing to say, and also something I like to practice quite a bit, which is after games, even before games, you can just be like, hey guys, like I want to practice this game, so I'm going to try to play my best. And then after the game, if you guys are willing, I would love to chat about how this game went, what decisions were made, how I politicked, how I thought you politicked. And it actually is crazy how much you can get out of these sorts of situations where you take the time, even 5 minutes after a game, to really sit with your 3 opponents, 2 opponents, even 1 opponent, and learn about all the things that were unknown at the time, or their thought processes behind why they did things and why they talked the way they did and why they accepted deals and why they didn't accept deals. So I think that's a really, really valuable thing on any deck, especially Etali.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just a universal skill.
Yeah. One thing that I thought would be funny is to do some mulligans with this deck together. I want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to just for those of you who haven't played Etali, and again, you know, it's not just like you're getting 7 mana on turn 2 every game. It's not going to happen like that. So there are mulligan decisions that actually are impactful, and I assume that the better you get at a deck like this, the more they are going to matter, right? Where it's like, oh, do I keep this turn 3 Etali, or do I go down and say like I think I can do better than that? All right, are we ready to jump into goldfishing? Sweet. All
Let's jump right in.
ABC EDH Mr. Chunk. Last updated 2 months ago.
Yeah, it doesn't change very much.
Yeah,
there's like a couple interesting cards out of Lorwyn.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm sure you're putting the Squelcher in, right?
Maybe.
Really?
I'm a little iffy on that card. And
I mean,
we can kind of go into
grid,
that when we start mulligan.
Right?
Yeah, so I used to be on Defense Grid. I used to be on Wandering Archaic.
Yeah.
I'm considering cutting cards like Veil of Summer and Autumn's Veil.
Okay.
Just because they don't feel as great as I'd want them to.
Yeah, I mean, 2 mana can't be countered. Your spells can't be countered. Is like, it's hard to beat that. It's really hard to beat that. You know. But yeah, okay. Let's jump on in. So we're gonna go in the blind. This is a good one. Yeah. If it was an untapped land, it would be turn 1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no.
This is not quite. This hand is like a little awkward just because it is not untapped land. So you're kind of limited in what you're able to do here. This is a card. This is a hand that you probably keep on like a Molda 6 or a Molda 5
because you just need to top deck a land in the first 2 turns. Yeah.
That's something that's pretty interesting about Etali is that we've actually gone quite high on land count. One of the players in the Etali Discord, Papa John's, he's done quite a bit of testing, and he believes that the sweet spot is close to around like 32 to 34 lands.
Wow.
Which is incredibly high.
For a turbo deck, I wouldn't say there's any other turbo deck with that many lands. Yeah. We're gonna
this hand has no lands, so we'll probably ship this one.
Yeah, this deck sucks
again. Yeah, so we're mulling pretty low here.
Yeah,
not quite too happy.
Right now.
Yeah, I mean, at a mold of 5, like you can't be too unhappy about like turn 2 wheel and just hope that your 7 is just better.
Yeah,
I'd probably keep this on a 5 unless I'm in just such a poor spot.
Okay.
And I would agree with those.
That makes sense. Okay, cool. All right, so we're drawing. I'll just play this out a little bit. Fetching to reduce the amount of lands we're going to get, right?
Yes. Yeah, we get our Taiga, throw down Wild Cantor. Wild Cantor is a card that people sometimes have questions about because they're like, why are you playing this and not a Mana Dork? And the reason is because if you flip this off of Etali during your Storm turn,
you get the
this
right away.
still provides you mana.
Yeah, makes total sense. We're not here for a long time. We're here for a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I'm just yossing out a wheel.
Yeah, we're just hoping. We're just hoping that we get to see a better hand here.
Seems pretty good.
Yeah, this is
worse.
Much better, but it's still not the greatest. We do get to see at least one more card on our next turn here. That doesn't help quite much.
Yeah, this is like
this. I think I agree. I think we're just throwing out our rocks and hoping to move on with, Etali is a very difficult deck to yeah, I mean this is one of those situations where like you might just be dirtling and hoping that other people are draining each other of their resources.
Yep, and you're just sitting and waiting. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Okay, well, let's look at another first.
Yeah.
All right, first 7. Shifting Woodlands, I was going to ask about too. That seems like an interesting card to have in this kind of deck.
Yeah, so like part of what being on like a really high land count means that we get to like play a lot of lands that you might think are like somewhat bad.
Yeah.
In a turbo deck. But because there's so many land tutor effects in the format at the moment, you're playing against like a lot of Rock Thrash, Cradle Storm decks.
Sure.
You want your flips off of them to feel impactful. And one of the ways that I've found that to be the case is Shifting Woodland, because the ability to hit something like a crop rotation and then have like an uncounterable food chain or something.
Sure.
Or Underworld Breach can really be the difference maker here. But as far as mulligans, go, this isn't quite great. Like, we're not super far away from casting Etali. We get to play Starting Town into Skirk Prospector, and then next turn we get to play Seething Song and we climb up to 5, sacking the Skirk and using the 2 mana here. If we had another land, that'd be up to 6.
But it's not quite 7.
It's not quite there. Yeah.
Okay, we'll go to second 7.
Yeah, unfortunately, this hand's terrible.
6?
Wow, this hand is very unfortunate. We're seeing some of like the highlight cards of the decks. Like some of the best cards in this deck are like, Tinderal, obviously Soul Ring, Jessica's Will, but we can't play any of them. So yeah.
Are we on 4 here?
One of the while we're like on the subject of mulligans, you can go the next hand, so we have something to look at. Yeah. But one of the nice things about mulligans in Etali is that you can do them very quickly. It's very easy to look at your hand and be like, this is bad, I'm putting it away. So when I'm in games, I will very often, basically almost always, mulligan out of turn order, because the worse I look, the less likely the opponents are to keep that hand just because it has MBT in it. Yeah. Or because it has Force of Will, right?
So you're just like, whatever, this hand's garbage, I'm on 4, and then you're like, well, I still have a turn 2 Etali.
Exactly. I mean, this hand is incredible,
right?
for obvious reasons. Even on a mold of 4, this, if I'm counting right, is a turn 2 Etali.
So so we're here into here.
Yep.
And then we would just keep these 2.
Yeah. On a mold of 4, this would be able to cast Etali.
And there's, I imagine, not a lot of value of playing these hands out, right?
Yeah. So there isn't very much value in terms of what you flip. I do believe Eldrazi Dev, right? His Mulligan Simulator is a bit better for this.
Let's use that.
One thing I would mention about that hand is that there is actually a correct way to sequence those cards, which is that you should cast the Seething Song before you cast the Sticker Goblin. And the reason for that is because the Sticker Goblin is a lot harder to counter.
Sure.
So if your opponent were to interact with the Seething Song, obviously you're in a bad spot, but you still have this Sticker Goblin in hand that maybe you can, if you draw very well, cast Etali on a later turn.
Yeah. And
whereas if you play the Sticker Goblin first, then you might be in a really bad spot.
Right.
But
well, they both make 5 mana here. So how just for, my understanding, the group's understanding, like how does this change the math?
So if I cast it doesn't change the math. It just means that if I play the Sticker Goblin first, I've committed a resource.
Okay.
And then if I play the Seething Song and it gets countered,
Gotcha.
I'm not casting Etali, but I also just don't have this Sticker Goblin anymore.
Yeah, it's like, let me put the harder to counter spell second instead of first. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're looking at a first 7. This is our pod: Magda, Marnius, Noctis. We're in 4th seat.
Yeah, this is pretty bad.
Yeah.
For as far as pods go, you never want to see Esper, just because Esper very much leans into those big games where they want to take it slow. They're happy to be like, oh, this hand has land Esper Sentinel MBT.
Yeah.
Perfect 7.
Yeah. The rest of these cards don't even matter.
Yeah. But as far as like the opening hand anyway, it's not quite good. It
No.
doesn't do very much at all.
Certainly not quite
does not
good.
count to 7.
That's mulligan.
Yeah, this hand is a little more interesting because at first glance it's like, oh, no rituals. This isn't very good. However, Worldly Tutor is an incredibly powerful card in this deck because Treasonous Ogre is probably the best card in the entire deck.
Sticker Goblin too is another idea, right?
Yes.
Here? Yeah, because
Sticker Goblin can be very interesting because you have like Twin Flame.
Yeah.
So it can end up double ritualing.
Yep.
Especially if you have really good stickers. Like if you have 6 and a 5, then this Twin Flame actually is 2 mana, make 5 mana, which is incredibly strong. And you could,
even if we're assuming that we have 5s like on Sticker Goblin, then we go turn 0, probably get rid of the Veil. Right, so that I have. Would you get rid of Fury here?
I would get rid of Fury just because I never want to pitch this Twin Flame to it.
Gotcha. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So we can draw for turn. That can change some things, right? Probably play our shock here, save our fetch for our surveil if we need it eventually. We can Worldly Tutor for our Sticker Goblin, and then on turn 2, right? Play our land. Play our Sticker Goblin for 5, go to 3, cast Twin Flame. Even if we get a 4 off that, that's a turn 2 Etali, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
the only reason, like, I think if you're goldfishing on Moxfield, that is like the correct line. It's the fastest way to an Etali.
Yeah.
But I would like to lean against, like, because there's just 2 Esper decks in the pod.
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable taking it slower.
Oh, really? Okay, interesting.
Just because, especially with the Magda in the pod, which is terrible to flip off of, a single flip is probably going to be pretty difficult to transition into a win.
Yep.
I would lean towards going for the Treasonous Ogre, taking an extra turn. That way you're able to go Treasonous Ogre into Twin Flame.
Gotcha. Okay, so I have Veil of Summer potentially if I draw
you
mana.
Potentially have Veil of Summer, but also it means that your first Etali is a lot harder to counter. Like this is again, like if you're relying on this Twin Flame to copy the Sticker Goblin, that's a instance where your opponent can cast a removal spell
and then you're
cast a counter spell, and then you're blown out. Whereas if you play Treasonous Ogre, they don't have an opportunity where like Fierce Guardianship or Swords of Plowshares is going to influence your first Etali.
Gotcha. That makes a ton of sense. So in this pod then, and I think it's really interesting that we're talking about this, that, how your pod composition, because usually with Turbo decks, it's like the pod composition doesn't really change my plan that much, right? How does pod composition change? Are you usually, like you said, with, double Esper and a Magda, like not great flips, you're going to lean into a little slower plan with more resiliency? Is that the thought process?
Yeah. It's not only just leaning into the plan of slower for resilience's sake, it's also kind of just assuming that because the other decks at the table aren't leaning into the same strategy as you, their flips are less likely to outright win you the game.
Gotcha.
Even with 2 Etali flips, there's a good chance that our board state is just like, I have like 3 card draw engines and a stacks piece.
Right.
And it's like, I didn't win, but like I probably will win, but I only got in this situation because I played the slow game in response to the fact that they have a slower game plan.
Interesting. Okay. So with that thought process, then, are we keeping this? This was a second 7, I believe.
This is a second 7. I think in this pod, I would keep this hand.
Interesting.
I really value the Veil of Summer, especially because it protects our Worldly Tutor.
Yeah.
So if I can ever get in a situation where I have a protected way to get Treasonous Ogre, I'm very happy with that.
So even though we're not seeing a turn 3 Treasonous Ogre with the current land situation we're in, you feel comfortable enough that by turn 3, I will have drawn my second land or some sort of acceleration. Okay.
Yeah, there's so many acceleration pieces in the deck that this can easily turn into a turn 3 or potentially even a turn 2 Treasonous Ogre.
Gotcha.
Well, I suppose not with the Worldly Tutor. It's pretty unlikely, but because you're eating one of your draws. But it's possible.
Yeah. Okay, sweet. So we're keeping this. We're going for the turn 3 Troger. We'll just quickly see what happens, right? So we Gemstone, we pitched Fury, we shocked. Are you chilling right here? You're not going to Worldly Tutor on turn 1? Like, there's not really a reason to.
I think I would, just because it allows us to be a little efficient in terms of, like, we have the mana for the Veil of Summer backup, right? So if this is going to eat, like, a mental misstep or something, I'd rather just protect it now.
You are forecasting a plan, right? Like, I'm not going to be able to play the Treasonous Ogre on turn 2.
Yeah, I think, it can depending on, like, what is present on the board. But I'm just kind of working under the assumption that they're not going to be able to counter our creature at all.
My only thought here is, like, if I have the ability, I want to sandbag this as much as possible. I want to make sure that I am as non-threatening as I can be, because I want them to be, like, on turn 2. I want them to hold up their mana, to interact with me, expecting me to go on turn 2. And then when I don't, then they're like, well, I'm not just going to sit here for another turn. I'm deploying my Rhystic Study or my Value Engine so I can be in this game. And that's when you can Worldly Tutor and reveal that information to the table, right? And I don't have to do it before then because I have no action spells on turn 1.
Yeah, I think it can vary depending on, like, again, I'm just, like, very scared of these 2 Esper decks where we can only beat one piece of interaction.
Sure.
So if we get to a situation where, like, yes, we're going to Worldly Tutor for this Treasonous Ogre, untap, cast it, try to win the game. We're looking at, like, turn 3.
Yeah.
There's a reasonable chance, depending on what it looks like. But I think it's a coin flip.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, the
could go
thought
either
too
way
is,
with
like, if I just fetch Surveil here, like, I get more options too. I might have better plays than Troger, right?
You could just see Troger on top of your deck.
Totally, yeah.
And then you don't have to cast.
Yeah.
You have to cast Worldly Tutor. Yeah, let's go ahead and Surveil here. And, we're not gonna keep this MDFC around. Doesn't really do much for us. Yeah.
Okay, so interesting. Now that we're on turn 3, we can have a whole slew of plays, right? Like, I can force a Vigor something if I need to, and then I can Worldly Tutor on top. Or I can hold back the Worldly Tutor, or hold back the Veil of Summer, not pitch this Force of Vigor, and still be able to interact profitably, right? And now on turn 3, I can, end step a Worldly Tutor. I can Veil if I need to. Draw my card.
I think this is a good moment to bring up part of how, like, removal is a little advantaged because it's proactive.
Yeah.
So, we don't have this carpet quite yet. And we have these 2 spells that we want to potentially cast.
Yeah.
And we have this Force of Vigor that means we wouldn't be able to cast one of them. Probably the Veil of Summer.
Yeah.
Now, if this was a Force of Will that we wanted to use to protect us, we just have to assume that this Veil of Summer can't be cast. Right, it's just gonna sit in our hand. But because Force of Vigor is a proactive card that can be used at your own discretion to target things that are already on the board, you can threaten this when it's not your turn to make some kind of political deal.
Yeah,
and then untap with the ability to still use Veil of Summer and Worldly Tutor.
Interesting. So you could say, like, hey, I want to. You could even lead with Worldly Tutor. You're like, hey, I want a Worldly Tutor. I'm probably getting a Troger. You have a Rhystic Study. If this isn't going to go through, I'm just going to Force a Vigor the Rhystic Study right now,
Exactly. Yeah.
Because I can't actually Veil when on turn 3. I can't Veil Troger Veil, right? Like, like you said, if they have the Force of Will, the Veil's dead. But if I can be proactive with my counterspell, what would your politics look like with this? Like, think of a scenario in which this could occur feasibly, and, like, how you might talk talk your way through it.
Yeah, so like again, I'm working under the assumption that I'm just hoping that my treasonous ogre is going to resolve through whatever interaction they have.
Yeah.
I'm just not gonna care about if they have exactly force of will or pact and negation. I'm gonna coin flip it here.
Yep.
The Veil of Summer, I want it to protect the Worldly Tutor. That's like the easiest thing to counter in the game, right?
Yep.
The 1 mana instant that everybody makes fun of. It gets hit by everything.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm probably going to like lead with, like, if there's anything that people want to keep on their board, a Rhystic Study, maybe Magda has, you just be like, hey Magda, you really want those 2 treasures that you have, probably. Don't cast that or something. You can make a lot of deals just because people want to keep their advantage engines, and hopefully you can carve out a path where your Etali is as unlikely to be interacted with as possible. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it just depends what your opponents have. They might be not willing to make deals because they have a million pieces of interaction in their hand. They don't have to worry about it. It's all contextual.
So like, let's throw this example out. Let's say that so seat, 3 player, right, has a Rhystic, and I'm on their end step. The thing, my thought process here is like, I could threaten without knowing they have interaction, right? I could be like, hey, I'm going to cast Troger on my turn, and I need to try and be as protected as I can, so I think I'm just going to force a Vigor of the Rhystic Study so you don't draw a bunch of cards. Or we could make a deal that you let me see Troger and Etali, and you're going to draw, 5 cards off of this, but you won't interact with anything. Is that the kind of deal you might make here?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Rhystic Study is one of these cards that I really like. You might think that negative card to see. Obviously, I wouldn't want them to have a Rhystic Study to begin with, but because we throw so many cards into it, it can be very easy to make deals where your opponents give you a chance to win, right?
How so?
Where you can be like, hey, I'm going to like cast an Etali on my turn. I think I kind of need to blow up your Rhystic to, not have, a point where I just feed you a bunch of interaction and I don't do anything. How about instead, I don't blow up your Rhystic Study. I will not pay for any of the Rhystic Study triggers. And you give me 1 turn. Maybe I win here. Maybe, I cast my Etali and I get there. But if I don't, you're going to have like 20 cards in hand.
Totally.
And you're absolutely going to win this game.
Yeah.
And maybe they look down at their like Flusterstorm or their, their 1 piece of interaction. They're like, hey, this seems like a pretty good deal. My hand doesn't actually do anything. I'd like 20 cards. Let's turn this game into a coin flip.
I love it. I think that's a really brilliant political move, and probably a great thing for any aspiring Etali players to check out. Especially when you have, like you said, this is not a counterspell, but it can be used as a piece of interaction when you play this deck.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do one more hand quickly. We're going to go Troger Etali.
Get more interesting than this. Yeah.
Okay, so we're in first seat, Kinnon's in second seat, Elevir's in third seat, and Blue Farm is in fourth seat. What's the thought process in this kind of game?
Yeah, so a little rough. There's only a single deck that has black in it. One of the most common ways that you're ever finding a win is like you want to hit mana, so you have the ability to cast more spells, then you want to hit a tutor so that you can cast Food Chain or Rionia,
right, and
basically win the game from there. If you can ever land either of those 2 spells, you're almost certainly going to win the game. Unfortunately, Elevir, stack, pretty rough, not very good hits.
Terrible.
Kinnon, yes, it has like a bunch of like random clones stuff, but a lot of their average hits are like, haha, here's like misdirection or whatever. Here's here's the 14th goofy counterspell that I decided to like put in my deck.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I don't think this hand is going to cut it. It is
certainly not.
Not fast enough. Flare duplication is like a little interesting, but it is not worth considering.
Yeah, and we do have Twin Flame Dualcaster, but we don't have the means to get there anytime soon.
Yeah.
All right, here's a second 7.
Well, this 7 is a lot more interesting. Of course, like, we are in first seat, so depending on, like, what our opponents are keeping here, this J-Will could be pretty impactful.
Yeah.
Kinnon is a deck that very often drops a bunch of cards, so I'm not really too reliant on them having a lot of cards in hand, but there's a decent chance that, like, the Elevir goes, like, Land Dork Pass.
Sure.
Or and doesn't do too much with their cards. That being said, we don't have a second land. And
I don't think we need it, though. Because our play pattern is, without drawing anything, right? land, Rite of Flame,
Rite of Flame.
Talisman.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
end step Noxious, this Rite of Flame
Yes.
on top.
Yeah.
And then we can draw for turn, Rite of Flame into Jessica's Will. Hopefully we make 6 mana, and then we play
Exactly.
Hawkeye. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this hand definitely can turn to an Etali. It just requires that someone has a 6-card hand going into our turn, which basically means that like one of the opponents has to, at least one of the opponents has to keep a 7 and then go like land 1 card pass.
Yep.
Which, depending on, you know, what you think, might be a little rough, might be a doable. But this is like a first 7. So,
this is.
this
is a second 7.
Oh,
You
second 7.
wouldn't keep this on second 7 then? You don't think?
I don't think so.
If you hit one more land, though, then if someone keeps a 5, right? Turn 2, someone has 5 cards in hand. That seems pretty reasonable, right? And our chances of hitting a land.
The thing is, we are using this Noxious Revival as part of our
and the Rite of Flame.
Our thing. So the odds of us hitting a land are like half of what they would be if we weren't doing that.
Sure. Yeah.
As you can see, thanks to this wonderful website, it tells us that there's a 30.4% chance for us to draw a land.
Yeah. We can also see what our opponents got.
Yeah.
Which is nothing on turn 1.
Wait, they did keep land dork.
Yeah.
You know, if they kept this.
It works.
So yeah, maybe
1 on seat 4 in turn 2. Yeah. But like it is interesting to see like, you know, another great feature of like Eldrazi Dev is you can see like sample hands, right? So we'd be like, oh, this did work out, you know, in this case. But for you wouldn't keep this on a second 7 in this pod.
Yeah, I think like it very much depends. Like you obviously like have the opportunity. Like this is like not necessarily something you should always like aspire to do, but you can like sandbag how long you're taking to mulligan, and be like, well, did they like? It's like, oh well, everybody like mulled to 5 while I'm looking at this 7. I'm gonna go look at another hand.
Yeah.
You know, don't quote me on that.
Right. But take it out. But okay, well, let's see if we go down to 6 if it gets better.
Yeah. Oh, this is a hand that I am significantly more appreciative to play.
This is just Troger.
This is just turn 2 Troger.
Yeah, right.
You get to Chromox. Unfortunately, you're exiling the Rite of Flame.
Or the Twin
If
Flame.
we draw any other red card, then we can exile that instead.
Right, because we have to. No, you can.
We have an ancient.
Oh yeah,
too.
it's the ancient too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so perfect.
Let's go.
Yeah. So the fantastic. Yeah.
Here,
we just
Imp Recruiter. Grab a Treasonous Ogre, and then I can even get it back if it gets countered.
Well, now we get to see the real advantage of Noxious Revival, which is that this card is incredibly good when you can use it to put cards on top of the deck that you would like to hit. So
interesting.
Not only do you get to like play this Etali and then Twin Flame the Etali, when the Twin Flame resolves, you have an Etali trigger on the stack, and you can just put the Twin Flame back on top of your deck.
That's sick.
To guarantee you. So this is turn 2, 3 Etali flips.
Probably get there.
Yeah. It'd be very... Even with the fact that there's only 1 black deck in this pod, I'd be like very surprised if you don't manage to win this.
That looks pretty good.
Pretty good. We could probably win this without looking at any other cards from our opponent's deck.
What do you EE into here?
So I mean, we have like the best cards,
right?
From like, so but like the easiest thing to like get another flip from this state would be like Hellkite Courser.
Gotcha. Okay.
You could just sacrifice the Treasonous Ogre if you have nothing else you want to sack. You just sack the Etali token. Get the Etali from the command zone because it memorizes CMC.
Actually,
there's a lot of things you can do.
How often are you keeping your original Etali versus letting it go to the zone? Obviously, it's hand dependent, right? Like, you know, if I have a clone or like a Twin Flame in hand, like I don't, and I can't cast that turn. Like I want to keep my OG Etali. And if I have more mana, then I want to keep the token. But in the blind or like when it's not as simple, what are you trending towards doing?
Yeah, if I'm just like blind, like I'm tapping out, I'm casting a Etali, and I hit a clone, more often than not, I am keeping the original Etali. Just because I expect to fizzle, especially if I don't have a significant amount of mana or like a way to follow it up. Like if you play your first Etali, you flip into a clone and then like 3 spells that do nothing, and you have no other mana, then probably safe to assume that you're not winning that turn.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. All right. I think we are kind of getting to the end of this. And I wanted to ask, what do you believe is the role of coaching or mentorship, and do you take any clients on who want to learn how to play the Dino?
Yeah, so I do coaching. Is not something that I do as, a profession, but I very much like to talk about fringe decks or decks that are not necessarily interacting with the meta in the same way that every other deck is. Those are the topics I find the most interesting, and I like to help people explore, especially, if you are playing with a commander that you are struggling to find advice on because it's not very popular, not too many people are talking about it. That is the type of stuff that I really like to help with. And of course, if you're looking for specifically Etali advice and more in-depth information on like how to navigate like Etali piles, things that aren't really like conducive to a podcast format, I'm happy to go over that with people.
Yeah. I mean, I thought this was an extremely informative discussion, like looking into how you're thinking about Etali, how you're politicking it. You're part of the Etali Discord as well, so that's another great resource if people are interested in joining that. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't recommend going to coach with you anymore. Like, this was really, really useful for me, and I'm sure I'll be putting some Dino back together, and as I usually do, every few months I get the urge and I put Etali back together, and it's been fun. But
it's a fun deck. But yeah, so like please, like I'm sure you could like have it linked below. The Etali Discord is super informative. Lots of great people there. People are always talking about the deck and different cool stuff that's going on. And me, I'm Sunglasses on Discord. Like literally just the username. Why
Sunglasses?
Sunglasses.
Why is that your username?
Oh man. It was kind of an inside joke with a bunch of friends. If you've ever seen my Discord profile, it has the ugliest like MS Paint PNG of a sunglasses emoji. But the thing is, I have like a whole group of friends with equally terrible looking sunglasses emoji PFPs that don't happen to really play cEDH, but they're a bunch of my like closest friends, and that's where it comes from.
Heck yeah. Okay, sweet. Yeah, Sunglasses on Discord. I have some very expectant puppies who demand that we go on a walk now.
I can tell.
But thank you so much for hopping on, Julian. It was really a blast to chat with you. And yeah, if you're interested in the Dino, if you haven't played it yet, give it a try. It is definitely a more nuanced deck than I think people give it credit for. And there is a skill gap that really occurs between the good and the not so good players. So especially if you're not having success on the deck and you're like, I don't get it, like I'm not sure what's going on, hit up Julian, go to the Etali Discord, learn more about the deck, understand what it does. We saw in these mulligans, right? Like it's more than just make 7 mana. Like there's some of these hands that are more contextual and like, how do I get there? And do I keep this or do I not? And so I think there is a lot more to this deck than meets the eye.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
All right, sweet. Well, thank you guys for watching. Let us know in the comments down below if you want us to do a part 2. If there's anything we missed in this episode that you're like, oh, I want to know how we did this, or like more mulligans or whatever it might be. Let us know. I'm sure, Julian, you're welcome to come on again. We can do this a round 2. Maybe we do a Trog episode. I think that could be fun.
Oh man, that'd be crazy.
People hate that deck. Talk about it. Talk about a deck that people fucking hate.
I'll just keep talking about decks people hate.
Yeah, Magna. It's my least favorite deck in the meta. But yeah, until then, thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe. Let us know how we did. If there's anything we could change or improve on, we're always open to the feedback. We also just started a Patreon, so this video is probably coming out a little bit after that. But if you want to support us in that way, we would love that and really appreciate that. And yeah, go play some cEDH.
Huge thanks to Julian for joining me on today's episode. If you guys enjoyed this, again, please leave a like and a comment. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, if this Dino is something you're excited about, if you're playing it. We're always open to feedback, and we love to hear more about how we can make the show better. So thank you guys for watching, and have a great rest of your week.